Welcome to Coast View, the show that every single day celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. Hey, before we get to our guest today, I want to share with you something that a friend posted, and it came from the Moment of Calm. It's a momentofcalm.org, and here's what it said. You know you've made the right decision when there is peace in your heart. I'll look for peace in my heart all the time. I hope you do as well. I mean, there's something that makes life a little bit more enjoyable when you're not all anxious about something. Look always to try to make the best decisions I can make, and I hope you're thinking about that as well. A friend of mine, Frank Nilet, he's from Long Beach. He doesn't live here any longer, but we stay in touch. He posted this: either you go after the life you want, or you settle for the life you get. That's pretty good. It's pretty powerful. But you know what? On Coast View, we're talking often about how do we raise the bar for coastal Mississippi. So the way I look at it is either you go after the community you want or you settle for the community you get. We've got to be really, really proactive. We can't settle. I've said many times on the show that complacency is probably our biggest enemy. You know, we've had to deal with so many disasters along the way, and it's I think a natural human tendency to say, you know, we've recovered from this disaster, so now let's take a deep breath. It's hard to keep your eye on the strategic ball when you're recovering from a major or a hurricane or an algae bloom or a pandemic or whatever the situation might be, the BP oil spill. Here's another one, and this was posted by my friend Stacy Waldrop. Don't wait for someone to bring you flowers. Plant your own garden and decorate your own soul. I love that one too. It really comes back to individually we control our own destiny, and that one also applies to the community and the work that we do in the community. Here's one of the things I know for a fact, that we control our own destiny here in coastal Mississippi. And believe me when I say that there are regions that we compete with that hope we get complacent, that hope we settle with where we are, because they see our potential and they worry that we're going to get our act together and go after our potential with a vengeance. And lastly, I want to share something. I saw some really interesting statistics about oil prices. And this is in October of 2014, the price of oil was $84.40, and there were 1,609 rigs, oil rigs. $84.40 was the price per barrel, 1,609 rigs. Today, the price of oil is in excess of $100. And there are only 531 oil rigs. Think about that for a minute. That's a pretty significant issue. And you may remember in my conversation with Austin Golding, who's the young in his 30s, president and CEO of Golding Barge Line. He's in a unique position there on the Mississippi River in Vicksburg to really kind of get a sense of what's happening with the oil industry. He does what he does is he transports refined petroleum products, petrochemicals, and other chemicals that are involved in the production of oil, and he's involved in basically all the U.S. inland waterway systems. And so he's in a unique position to talk about the situation as it relates to oil. And one of the points he made is the pandemic, just like every other business in America, it affected them. It affected the oil industry, so that, they're struggling to get employees. They've had to shut down some refinery capacity. Just like every other business, they've had to focus on this. So we are in a really unique position in the United States today, and I look forward to continuing my conversation with Austin Golding because he has such a unique perspective, and he's educating us about why these global markets are the way they are, and we only have so much control over ultimately what our energy prices are going to be. So anyway, without any further ado, let me move over to an old friend, Craig Sarton. Craig is an independent pharmacy owner. He's got a great story, incidentally, and he's a leader in the independent pharmacy community. We'll talk about that as well. We're actually going to be joined by Robert Dozier here shortly, and we'll talk about what his role is as well in the Independent Pharmacy Association here in Mississippi. But before we get into all of that and the issues facing the industry today, I just want to say good morning to my friend Craig Sarton. How you doing, buddy?
Hi, Ricky. How are you doing? Appreciate you having us on.
It's good to see you, man. Well, first of all, before we get into the business, let me mention sort of the important thing. As you know, I host Super Talk Outdoors, and over many, many years, I've watched you enjoy the outdoors. The outdoors is important to you, isn't it?
It's very important to you. If you followed me at all, I go really all over the United States, Canada, Alaska, and I've been to multiple countries, hunting, Tanzania, New Zealand, on and on and on. So that's a really big part of my life.
But you also spend a lot of time in Mississippi, don't you?
I do. I stay about 99% of my time here in Mississippi, and I enjoy the outdoors here in Mississippi. I have some property up on the Big Black River and a little bit north of Jackson, and family and friends, and we go up there and hunt and enjoy each other's company.
I know you do. I've spent a lot of time hunting at Horseshoe, which is not far from you.
Yeah,
and
not far at all.
And now I lease 3 separate farms up in the Mississippi Delta in Shula, between Greenwood and Blackhawk, and then down in Mentor City. And we're lucky, man. I often say about Mississippi that we're the capital of the outdoors in America, and we deserve that claim for sure. And I can honestly tell you that I can say that the outdoors saved me as I was growing up. You probably have your own belief about that as well, don't you?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean I grew up in the country, up in Sartonville, Mississippi, which is got one stop sign, no post office. It does have a general store, like all those little communities, and so I grew up on a farm, and working hard. So needless to say, when I had the opportunity to go off to college, I was kind of glad to get away from that farm life, but. I mean, Mississippi is. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to live in a couple other places in the United States, but you could not run me out of Mississippi. We have so much going for us in the state. Not only cost of living, quality of living, in particular the coast. I mean I go to Jackson a lot. I've got some brothers, and I spend a lot of time in Oxford, but. I mean, the coast is just spectacular. We have plenty to do, but it doesn't take us, 45 minutes to go across town, and we get to enjoy the beach. And so, coast is a special place.
It really is. It really is. And after retiring and then having sort of a good breather for 4 years, I'm still retired, but the opportunity to do this show, to take everything I learned as a publisher over all those years and apply it to the community, to focus on helping us reach our potential. The potential of coast of Mississippi, Craig Sarton, is incredible, isn't it?
It is. I mean, whether you position you take on the casinos, I think it's been wonderful, for the coast. Even if you don't gamble, there's so much to do there, and to enjoy, the restaurants, the entertainment. The coast has just got so much to offer, that other parts of the state, don't have. And I'm not saying that other parts of the state don't have, but the coast really is special.
It really is. Okay, so let's retrace some of your steps. What's fascinating about studying your sort of your steps in your career? When you graduated in 1979 from Ole Miss, you came to the coast, and in 1981, and you started working for Jones Brothers Pharmacy. But just a couple of years later, you opened your own business. You were just a kid.
Well. Yeah, I was. First of all, Ricky, I mean, I've got to say that, I've been blessed beyond anything I could possibly imagine. All good things come from God, and I 100% believe that. He has blessed me in every single aspect of my life, with family and business, and so, that's where I owe everything. But yeah, I mean, I came down to the coast. I worked for Jones Brothers. They filed bankruptcy. Big B bought them out, and I saw pretty quickly that I didn't like working for the big corporate, thing. And I had a real good friend of mine who was a physician that offered I was just mentioning one time I'd love to be able to open my pharmacy, and a pharmacy said, "Well, you need to do it." I said, "Well, I don't have any money. I mean, I borrowed every penny to go to college, worked every summer, every holiday, and didn't have the funds to do that." And he said, "Well, I'll help you. Put together a plan." So I put together a plan, and believe it or not, opened up my first pharmacy for $50,000. I
Wow.
have more money invested in the pharmaceuticals in my refrigerator now at the store than what it cost to open the first pharmacy. And so, it just was, it started slow. And then over the next few years, it continued to get better and better. And then I built a bigger building, and I've bought and sold pharmacies over the years. But, I just feel fortunate to be involved in independent pharmacies.
So what's cool about Craig Sarton's story, from Sarton Drugs, is that, how does an independent guy survive when all these other major players are out there? We're gonna retrace some of those steps here shortly, but we'll continue the conversation with Craig Sarton when we come back from break. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Coast View. We're having a conversation with Craig Sarton from Sarton's Discount Drugs. And Craig, one of the things I talk about on this show all the time is the importance of small business, the importance of entrepreneurs and what that means. And I don't even know if you even realized at the time when you were this young guy starting your first drugstore at $50,000 that you were truly an entrepreneur, someone with dogged determination to build something. At the time, you probably just thinking, I'm just trying to get a drugstore open. But did you ever in your wildest imagination think that it would evolve into this multiple format type of a business that you built?
No, Ricky, not in a million years. Excuse me, what I dreamed that, it had grown into what it is today. Excuse me 1 second.
That's okay. No problem at all. Yeah, when I look at your journey, the number of drugstores you've co-owned along the way and the specializing that you've done along the way with the Vital Care, et cetera, it's incredible what your business has become. But you had to be an entrepreneur. You had to pay attention to where the opportunities were, and then you had to seize the moment. And clearly, for being a young guy who opened up your own pharmacy business because you didn't want to go to work for the big guys, you had that in you. Where did that come from? Was it the farm?
I don't know. I mean, there was, when I went to college, and there was no room for failure. I mean, it just really wasn't. I didn't have a dad or a fallback or anything. It was, get your degree and be successful, and you're going to have to provide for yourself and your family, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but my motto has always been in business that it is meant to be, it'll happen. You don't have to put a square peg into a round hole. And so that's always been the case with me. And, like I said, I've never in a million years would believe that it evolved into what it did. But, I've been blessed with that ability to see something and be able to achieve that goal. Now, sometimes my wife would get on to me and say, how much more are you going to take on? And it was not, how much more money. It was, how much more, could I do this? It was another challenge. And when I saw that challenge placed in front of me, then, I took the opportunity to see, where I could go with it. And it, the community, has received us extremely well over these years. We've been around so long, most everybody knows who we are. So I'm just truly blessed.
But see, Craig, that doesn't guarantee success. So let's go back. If you go back and look at what was emerging during your ascension and expansion as a business, you saw the emergence of K&B, and then Walgreens and Rite Aid, and then you had and then of course Walmart and all these other like major players, and then the mergers and acquisitions that occurred, and all this incredible investment that was happening, the expansion plans they had. And we're going to get to specifically some of the issues that you face today in just a second. That's not what this question is about, but it's about how did you define in your mind that you weren't going to let that the big guys deter you? How were you going to find your competitive advantage within the realm of what was happening in the world that, when you were expanding?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I first opened my first drugstore, there were 4 drugstores in a mile of me, and now there's one. And the things that separate a successful independent, myself included, is how we treat people. And I know that may seem trivial, but that is 100% true. We develop those relationships. When they walk in, we know their name, we know what drugs they take. And so it's that extra step that we take that differentiates us from, and I'm not saying the chains don't have some good employees, et cetera, but I often would get, asked, what would you do if a Walmart came in across the street? And I said, I would cheer, because that Walmart is going to put 300 cars in that parking lot, and a bunch of them are going to come over to see us. And then that's where we take over. The independent as a whole has so many services and so many things that we can do that aren't traditional pharmacies. We deliver, we have charge accounts, we have this brand of, home health, or et cetera, that most people don't have. We have compounding, we have this, and then I started in the, infusion business. So, a lot of it has to, to be services, but, it ultimately boils down to how you treat people.
Well, what's interesting about it, though, you think about it. Okay, so let's take a middle-aged person who comes in and gets a prescription from you, and then they get impressed with the care they get. They come back in the future. They're amazed that you remember them. There's a relationship that develops between the two of you, and the good independent drugstores have figured that out. But then what happens is they get a little bit older. They get a little, they may get sicker, or they may have challenges in their life, and they have different needs. The traditional pharmacy may not necessarily serve their needs from a healthcare perspective going forward. And what you saw, this is the entrepreneur in you. You saw that there were great opportunities for you. You mentioned compounding, you mentioned home care, but you saw that this is an opportunity for you from a business perspective to be able to serve that person's medical needs beyond just filling a prescription. How did that come in your head? Where did that come from?
I'll tell you a quick story. I was just looking through a pharmacy journal, I guess about 34 years ago, and this is where I think that God intervenes. I was looking through a pharmacy journal, and there was a franchise opportunity for home infusion, and that was new. Nobody was doing that, and it was based out of California. And so I made a few phone calls, and it was quite expensive, so I just kind of put it on the back burner for a week or two. And in come walking a gentleman, Johnny Bell, who started Vital Care, which is a franchise, which is currently their home offices in Mississippi and Meridian, and they have franchises all over the country. He comes walking in a week or so after I looked at that in a journal, and he gave me the spiel in about 10 minutes about home infusion. And as soon as he finished it, I said, I want to do it. He said it was the easiest sell that he'd ever had in his life. He walked in, cold called, and a guy told him he wanted to do it because, I'd done a little bit of due diligence, but, that's where it gets back to that, the square peg into a round hole. I didn't have to force that. It fell 100%, into place, and, just feel real fortunate that, that it happened.
Well, you opened your first drugstore in 1983, and that was in 1989. So you're still this young guy.
Yep.
But you had to pay attention. Entrepreneurs, the key to success is really understanding where the evolutions need to be in your business. How do you continue to serve the needs of the community that you've defined as your pharmacy customers? And it seemed to me, man, looking back on this, that Vital Care was just another step in the overall evolution of what your understanding of how you could serve needs, and that evolved into other things as well. So it's incredible when you look back. I know time flies, but how do you look at it when you look back on it now?
I'm amazed. I'm absolutely amazed. I mean, when I first opened my first pharmacy, my goal was to do $1,000 in a day. In one whole day. And so we'll do $1,000 in one prescription now. Times have changed. When I first got out of pharmacy, a great salary was $18,000 or $19,000 a year for pharmacists. And so, but I look back and pharmacy has changed so much, but I think, what makes the difference between somebody who is content is that you have to be afraid to not take a risk. And I've always had that ability or that mindset. And again, you see something and you go it, but you don't try to make it work. If it's going to work, it's going to happen. You do your due diligence, and if you're willing to take that chance, then things fall into place. And and then you look up, and with any entrepreneur, any business owner, if they're not looking forward, they're going behind. And so, and that's the case certainly in pharmacy.
Well, the other part of your business that is important, and I did this too when I was in the newspaper business, is I was super active in industry organizations. One was obviously you wanted to give back to your industry and you want to be in touch with what they're doing. But the other is by developing these relationships with people who are also in the industry, maybe in other regions of the country and whatever, you get access to some best practices. You get access to developing relationships and finding what other people are doing. And you learn a lot from doing that, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, I serve on some national and regional boards that we go and, we'll spend a day or two and we'll talk about, cutting edge, the stuff that nobody's doing yet that's just around the corner. So it's so important for a pharmacist or any business person to be active in their associations, because a lot of times, when you go to conferences, you listen for hours on end, you try to stay awake and blah, blah, blah. But where you learn the most is the breaks from talking to other business owners. And that's where you gain the most knowledge.
And when you're an independent pharmacy owner, you better pay close attention to what your brethren are doing, because you're in this thing together trying to figure out what your what your local competitive advantage is going to be. We're talking to Craig Sarton. He's in the pharmacy business in Coastal Mississippi. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Robert Dosher, who is the executive director of the Mississippi Independent Pharmacy Association, and kind of, continue this evolution about why, being involved in an association is really important. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Coast View. We're having a terrific conversation with my old friend, Craig Sarton. And, one of the cool things, Craig, that this show gives us an opportunity to focus on. I remember really early in my career, Rolling Week sent me all over the country to some of the best schools in the country. I did. If I shared with you the list of things that I had the opportunity to be involved in as a leader at the Sun Herald, you'd be amazed at Roland's commitment to my development. But one of the programs I was involved in, I heard the term dogged determination really early in my career, and I use it all the time because I think, as a leader, you have to be doggedly determined to achieve a goal, to develop people, to make a company successful, and all those things. The way I would describe you, probably early in your career, and probably still today, is doggedly determined. Would you describe yourself that way?
I would, certainly, for the first 30 years. And don't get me wrong, I have not changed that. If an opportunity were to present itself, I would doggedly attack it. And but I'm 66. I'm planning on doing more hunting, if that's possible, and enjoying, kind of stepping into retirement a little bit. But it's like I tell my wife, I've got to go somewhere to sit and look at my Ole Miss stuff on the computer and drink coffee and talk to people. So I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. But you've got to have that determination and relentless desire to improve, your business. And I think every successful entrepreneur has that.
So when we went to break, we were talking about your involvement over the years. You got involved in Mississippi's Pharmacy Association back in 1991. You started to take leadership roles and join committees in 1995, and then you went into be advisory boards for all kinds of other organizations, both locally, regionally, and nationally. But the Mississippi Pharmacy Association is incredibly important to you, isn't it?
It is. the association, again, they have conventions and different things you can join and talk with those folks. But, I'm going to shift it just a little bit and take it to the Independent Pharmacy Association that we have on the coast. That is, I know everybody. I've been here so long, and we're all good friends. We try to help each other. We work together, and the Pharmacy Association really helps. But Robert's, association, Mississippi Independent Pharmacy Association, is critical. It is absolutely critical, the work that he does, to help us as independent pharmacy. Our independent pharmacy is under attack. That's just, that's just plain and simple. With the advent of PBMs from, I guess they started probably about 25 years ago, and they basically were just a billing organization, a pass-through. They have changed the face of independent pharmacy. And so, I'm a preceptor or an instructor, clinical instructor for several schools of pharmacy. And up until about 5 years ago or 4 years ago, I told those students when they come through and do their rotation, 5-week rotation with me, that independent pharmacy is still a golden opportunity. But I can't tell those students that anymore, because you've got these PBMs that basically dictate every single aspect of what we get paid. And so, it's critical for us, to the independent pharmacies on the coast to stick together, which is what I did, I guess, about 6 years ago when I put together a big group of independent pharmacies that we pooled all of our purchasing power, and then we put all of our business out to bid to the big wholesalers, and to lower our costs to be able to stay into business.
Yeah. Hey, this would be a good transition to bring Robert Dozier into the conversation. He's actually executive director of the Mississippi Independent Pharmacy Association. Robert, thank you for joining me on COSU.
Good morning. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. So you've heard a lot of the conversation up to this point, but we'll come back to how's this sort of billing issue that he was mentioning just a second ago, how it affects you guys and what other issues are out there that you're tackling. But you heard sort of how we were having this conversation, that independent pharmacy operators have found a really terrific way to find their competitive advantage within the guise of all these major players. And that's sort of been what your organization is all about, isn't it?
That's correct. We serve a vital interest in helping promote independent pharmacy in the state of Mississippi and also on the national level as well. You take individuals like Craig Sarton. He's a legend down on the coast and everything in the independent pharmacy community. We have a lot of other great men and women in the pharmacy community across the state who are doing a great job as well too. And it's not only is it promoting independent pharmacy, but it's also helping protect the independent pharmacy profession for the years to come. And, Mr. Craig brought up a very important point, the pharmacy benefit managers. And earlier in this segment here, Mr. Craig said, well, if a Walgreens or a Walmart came across the street, what would he do? He'd just be ecstatic. He'd be just super happy because he's going to end up with a lot of those customers because he's going to provide a better service, a better product than that chain pharmacy. No offense to them. I just know Mr. Craig and I know the independent mindset. But the pharmacy benefit managers, they have such a tight death grip on independent pharmacists out there, and they control every aspect of the business. The pharmacy benefit managers have gotten into a position over 25, 35 years from going basically from a billing service, a third-party administrator, to controlling every aspect of the prescription drug supply chain, not only on the independent pharmacy side or the retail pharmacy side, but employers need to wake up and pay attention to these pharmacy benefit managers, and the end user, the consumer, the patient, they really need to start paying attention to this because pharmacy benefit managers are the number one reason why prescription drug costs are steadily going up every year.
Hey, so look, hey, Craig, coming back over to you, I have a couple of brother-in-laws that are in regional and national sales for Novartis. So over the course of the last 25 years, I've literally watched this whole notion of these benefit managers and what their roles are. But for the average person, tell for the average person, because this is a really important issue for your business. Obviously, tell what they do.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So like everybody, most everybody that's employed and even people that are retired, they have a prescription card that they take into their pharmacy and give it to them. Well, that is administered by a pharmacy benefit manager, PBM. And so each of those PBMs then in turn negotiate contracts with either directly to the pharmacy or through what they call a PSAO, which represents a large group of pharmacies of a reimbursement schedule. And so then they will tell us what you're going to get paid or what you're going to lose. And when I say that, people say, oh, no, you don't lose. Yes, we do. We had a law that was passed that went into effect 1 of 21 that was passed by the Mississippi legislature that said that a PBM cannot pay us below our cost. Now, let that sink in. We had to get a law passed to get paid our cost, to not make a penny, but our cost. And they are completely ignoring that law. And so we get paid literally below cost on all sorts of prescriptions. So these PBMs, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of what they do to pharmacies. Your brother-in-law, for instance, Novartis, these PBMs will go to Novartis and say, you're going to give me 40% rebate to process your drug, your name brand drug or whatever. And then they're going to in turn give some money back to the insurance, but then they're going to keep the difference. Spread pricing. And so, it truly is costing not only us and the pharmaceutical companies, but, the patients, unbelievable amount of money. And so, there's a whole bunch of legislature, not only in our state, but other states that, hopefully are going to get this reined in. Otherwise, you're going to see more and more and more independent pharmacies go out of business.
What's interesting to me about this, and unfortunately it is interesting, but it's also tragic as well, if something's not done to curtail it, is that it's almost like you could see it coming, because insurance companies were already dealing with doctors in this way, only willing to pay a certain amount for whatever the procedure was going to be and all of this. It seemed like as they continue to re-engineer ways they could make more money, that it would eventually spill over into the independent pharmacy or just pharmacies in general, that would end up creating sort of a giant sucking sound for independent pharmacies in the process. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation with Robert Dozier, who's the executive director of the Mississippi Independent Pharmacy Association, and Craig Sarton, a pharmacy entrepreneur here in coastal Mississippi. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Coast View. We're having a great conversation today with Craig Sarton and Robert Dozier about, first of all, the opportunity for independent pharmacies to create incredible competitive advantage in the community. When you think about the big guys and, Walgreens and Rite Aid and all these guys, and they've really stood the test of time. And it's really cool to hear how they did that. But as I mentioned just before we went to break, there's obviously this evolution that's happened in insurance business in general. And doctors have been subject to all these changes for many, many years now. It was only natural probably that you'd see this spill over into the pharmacy arena. But, Robert, in your world, I bet, gosh, this is such a very significant issue because it really speaks to the business case of an independent pharmacy owner. First of all, how do you see it? And second, do you feel like you're sort of, swimming against the tide here?
Well, it is a David and Goliath story, that is for sure. Mr. Craig talked about getting involved in associations and some of his group that's down on the coast and everything else like that. Independent pharmacists are becoming more involved on the political side because This is the only way we can battle and fight back against this storm right here, against the pharmacy benefit managers. Not only are the independent pharmacists trying to shine the light on the unfair business practices that the PBMs force on the independent pharmacies, but we're also showing the problems that the pharmacy benefit managers are also causing for the employers and the ultimate end user, the patient, the customer, and they're also in getting the short end of the stick as well, just like Mr. Craig and the rest of the independent pharmacy community out there. Because these pharmacy benefit managers, they only care about one thing, and that is corporate greed. When you have the three largest pharmacy benefit managers, they are controlling 80% of the prescription drug business out there. There's no real competition. Mr. Craig, he's been in business for probably, 30, 40 years. And, here he is. We were talking about his business skills and being an entrepreneur and everything. I can guarantee you that Craig Sarton has never negotiated a contract with a pharmacy benefit manager, because pharmacy benefit managers do not negotiate contracts with independent pharmacists. It is a take it or leave it contract. And not only do they force these unfair contracts on the independent pharmacists, but a lot of times they are the competition as well too. And just to kind of dumb it down, it's kind of like McDonald's telling Burger King how much they're going to charge for the Whopper, and that is totally unfair. There's no competition. There's no oversight. There's no transparency. It's a lot of moving parts. And, PBM is kind of like that guy on The Wizard of Oz. He's the man behind the curtain, so to speak. And a lot of people don't know about it, and that's just, it is a David and Goliath story for sure.
So moving back over to Craig. Craig, what's interesting to me is you mentioned passing a bill in Mississippi just so you can get your costs covered. That's ridiculous. It's sad, actually.
Yeah.
But but you think about this as a national point of view. Along the way, I had the opportunity to teach business law at Jeff Davis, and obviously the Sherman Antitrust Act and collusion and all of that. To what extent, on the national level, is there movement around that?
There is. I mean, there's quite a bit of movement, and I could talk a little bit about it, but Robert's the expert. I'm going to let him comment on that because that is his area of expertise, and you're going to learn more from what he has to say than what I would say.
So is there the opportunity here to pin collusion on them?
Yeah, it is, and not. It was maybe a few weeks ago. The FTC started looking into the problem with allowing all of these pharmacy benefit managers to merge and to take over 80% of the business, and it is a monopoly because these pharmacy benefit managers. I go back 20, 30 years ago. They started off basically as a third-party administrator, just handling claims and everything. And then they started merging and they got into the mail order business, then the retail pharmacy business. And then they start dictating terms to the brand name drug manufacturers. Now, I never thought I would feel sorry for the brand name drug manufacturers, big pharma. But the PBMs, they basically hold a gun to them and say, hey, if you don't give us so much in rebate, we're not going to put your product on the drug formulary for all of these patients of ours. And so, big pharma is being held hostage. Then, these employer groups, they don't really know what they're paying. They're being forced to pay all of this money for high dollar brand name drugs when the generic could work just as well. But the PBM has an incentive to push the brand name drug. And then, here they come with a no negotiating contract with an individual like Mr. Craig and such. So yes, they're starting to show some light in the anti-competitive business and everything. Correct.
Well, it seems it's obviously from a legal perspective, it's super complicated, but at least in this conversation today, we got a chance to see what it takes to succeed in the business. We got a chance to see what an association does when you got such a complicated issue like pharmacy benefit managers and what they're doing to independents. And that's really what I wanted to accomplish. I wanted people to be inspired by your story, Craig, and impressed that you guys are all working together to make sure that there's a future for independent pharmacies. So thank you so much for spending some time with me today, Robert Dozier and Craig Sarton.
Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
It's
Thank
been a
you.
pleasure. I've been inspired by the conversation. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.